everyone, so today I'm going to be making a BFN tier list, or I've made one, and I'm going to be talking about it today. So before we begin, this is just my opinion, you don't have to agree with me, you are free to disagree with me, and Mech, Space Station, Oak, and all the legendary upgrades are ranked separately. So with that out of the way, let us reveal the tier list. Alright, so the first real bit to talk about, I guess, is Iceberg Lettuce at the bottom. Obviously, because she was never actually included within the game, she's in the unused tier. But the tier list I had here came with runway, so I did just decide to include her in it. Okay, so now for the first real tier D tier. And in here I've put Cactus, because personally, I feel like Cactus is probably the worst plant in the game. She's just kind of awkward to use. I mean, she's not necessarily a bad character, but if she gets into a fight, then she's most likely going to lose, and in most situations, she is basically just a free kill. Obviously, she is still relatively good. She's not bad, but out of all the characters in the game, I would definitely say she is probably the worst, and so that's why I have put her in D tier. Alright, Sunflower and C tier. Out of the two healers in the game, I really feel like she is kind of just an awkward character to use. Not necessarily bad, but she just feels very clunky, slow, and awkward. I know back in, the early days of Enable, she was able to keep teammates pretty much invincible. But just nowadays, compared to Scientist, I just feel like she is lacking. Not as bad as Cactus, but I do feel like she is lacking, and that's why I've put her in C tier. Rose is a bit of a weird one, because although Rose is still quite strong, as a support character, she isn't exactly the best. Obviously, she's more like engineer in terms of support on boosting her teammates with, damage and speed, and obviously the goat fight. And as a support character, she does actually do quite well. But again, you do, in some situations, need your teammates' help in order to win some fights, and it just makes it a bit easier. So I've put her in C tier, because as a support character, she is actually fairly decent. Electric Slide is probably one of the worst zombies. When it comes to her upgrades, it's very awkward to put them together. But as a base character, she is fairly good. The magnet is quite situational, and the disco tornado can be used to set up a good kill set and kill streak, but it can be kind of awkward. And out of fight is, and it's not exactly ideal for what it's intended for. I mean, you can obviously tank a couple hits and get away, but you can't sprint. So in most situations, people catch up to you fairly quickly, which can be a bit of an issue. But overall, she is a fairly decent zombie. Now, Falling Apart is next, and when it comes to legendary upgrades, we are only going to talk about the thing that they add. In this case, we're going to be talking about the Fallen Rocket Attack. Now, as a whole, the Fallen Rocket Attack is actually quite strong. They did nerf it, so it is harder to charge up, and it does less damage. But even still, in the final update, in the current build of the game, it still does 100 damage total, 20 per orb. So really, it's best used as a finisher, or to kill off weak opponents like imps and deadbeards, and also scientists. So as a whole, I do think it is the best experience for Rose players. I don't think it doesn't make Rose any that much better, apart from your attack, which is quite strong. So still C tier, but definitely better than regular Rose. I was actually tempted to put Imp in B tier, although comparing him to the other attacking zombies, I decided to put him in C tier with Slide. So as a whole, Imp doesn't actually have very good damage output. He only hits 4s and 5s, but his abilities are actually pretty good. Imp Carter is a good finisher, and Gravity Nade does hold enemies in place, allowing you to land more headshots. Now, obviously, with the Butt Booster upgrade, he is incredibly mobile, and he can get around some really big gaps. In fact, I'm going to make a video in a couple days about how that one upgrade completely breaks one of the PvE missions. But aside from that, Imp does kind of rely on his teammates to weaken or distract enemies while he gets some work on them. And as a general, he is a little bit lacking when it comes to being an attack class, but he is still a fairly good character. Now, a couple of months back, I did actually make a video discussing whether or not I thought TV Header Wildfire was the better class, and if you haven't seen that video, do be sure to go back and find it and watch it. It is quite good if you're interested in finding out which one you should buy. But as a whole, Wildfire is still very good. The instant impact grenade is very good. The bucket is about the same as TV Heads, and Dandelion is quite good for reaching people who are higher up. But it's not as good as chasing people down, and it is quite loud because it does giggle a lot. But as a whole, Wildfire is a fairly decent character if you do have him, so I'm going to be ranking him beta. I'm being honest, Space Cadet is a very underrated character. Although her gimmick is homing, it doesn't very often come into actually being used. Because even at range, even though her crosshair is quite big, at range she is still very good. I believe it's called Feedback Loop. With that upgrade, if you do critical damage, you fire faster. And with that, you can actually take out standing still targets like P-Gatlings and Sunbeams quite quickly. And then obviously, Big Bang Beam is like a very weak ZPG, and she does have the mobility as well with the Gravity Smash. In a way, I'd consider her almost a weaker version of Foot Soldier. Kind of like a weird hybrid between Imp and Soldier. So if you like kind of the mobility, but the nice kind of aggressive playstyle of a Foot Soldier, I definitely say Space Cadet is quite a good character. In all honesty, I know many people would probably say Nightcap is around A tier, but personally I don't think she's very good. I mean, her bullets you do have to be closer for, and because of her low health, it doesn't really allow you to get that close because of the arcing bullets. Fung Fu is quite predictable, and a lot of characters can easily dodge it and maneuver it, so characters like Scientist and Super Brains and Foot Soldier are easily able to avoid it. And although it is strong, it is easy predictable. And Shadow Sneak, again, you can, if you're paying attention, you can see her walking around, and the Shadow Bubble can be easily avoided if you see it coming. But she isn't completely bad. She does have her uses, and for that reason, I am keeping her in B tier. I did initially have Chomper in A tier, but I decided to move him down. So, a Chomper as a whole. His abilities are a bit of a mixed bag. On one hand, you have Spikeweed, which is... I'm only putting him at where he is because of the recent glitch with Spikeweed, where destroying it will give you overhealth or health, even without Vampire Spikeweed equipped. So you have Spikeweed, which is a kind of bad ability, and then you've got Groody Goop, which is arguably one of the best abilities in the game. Now, as a whole, Chomper is quite a strong melee class, actually, and Slobber Shot is incredibly strong as well. Burrow, on the other hand, is a bit too predictable. There's a bit too much time to react to it. And obviously, there isn't many counters to it, like direct counters, apart from Engineer. And, Deadbeard's barrel doesn't work anymore. So there's only, one character who can directly counter Burrow. But as a whole, Chomper is still very strong, and he is able to very quickly dispatch of even Super Brainses, which we will go on to later on. You can probably see the nest here. But yeah, that's why Chomper is in beta. Scientist is by far the best healer in this game. The healing hose alone is able to heal multiple people at once, and from a really big distance too, at least when it's upgraded. I mean, sticky healy thing, I think the heal bomb would have been better, but yeah, I do see what they were going for. Warp is obviously very good for traversing around and dodging attacks, and he is able to take on lower health targets like Nightcaps, and deal with higher health targets like Oak. But in some cases, against fast-moving targets, he can struggle, but I do still think he's a very good character, and for that reason, I'm putting him in beta. Honestly, Wizard is probably one of the most balanced characters in this game. Already, his default weapon is very good. Even the slow down charge up Abracadabra is very strong. Elixir, Z-Elixir even, is very versatile actually. It gets rid of fire, grody goop, jinx, it can stop you being burrowed, it can save you mid-burrow. I think it can even dispel the goat effect, if I'm not mistaken. I'll have to look that one up at some point, as I think so, it can do that. Co-Star is obviously very strong. It does boost you and your allies. Pretty much allows you to go anywhere a normal zombie can go. And then you have, Staff Sandwich is very good. Spell Disaster even. So all in all, a very well-rounded character. So I will have to say that Wizard is a definite B-tier character. Gorn is a character like Foot Soldier, used to be incredibly bad. And now I wouldn't say he's as good as Foot Soldier, but he is still definitely quite a strong character. Shark Shot, while dealing probably, I think, the most amount of damage in the game, near that, it's still in 2 hits, and it can be easy to avoid the second shock once you know the first one's hit you, or you see the first one coming. And in general, just Korn is a fairly decent character, honestly. Very, like Wizard, he's quite a well-rounded attack class, so I do think he is definitely no higher than B. Although on this list, the Space Station is placed higher than the Space Cadet, the lists are not in order. They're just how I put them there. In all honesty, I think the Space Station itself is a little bit of a downgrade if you're the one controlling it. Because you have more health, but you are slower, and you are, not as strong, I'd say, as the normal Space Cadet. Although a full health space station with maximum passengers and full teamwork is definitely stronger than a full Oak, because it's harder to kill it's harder to kill a space station just in general. But as a whole, it is still very strong, and like Oak, it's a B tier. Under most circumstances, I would probably put Oak maybe nearer A tier, honestly, maybe even in A tier. But just as a whole, Oak is quite good. He has a lot of health, he can sap jump with upgrades. The sap trap itself is very strong, and roll for damage is very strong. Just as a general, Oak is quite an intimidating character to go up against, but at the same time, he is also fairly strong to play with. So, for that reason, B tier. I was honestly tempted to put Deadbeard in A tier, honestly. I decided not to. So as a whole, Deadbeard is very good. Shotgun is strong, like Scientist. Good sniper weapon, pretty much the same as Cactus. But his abilities are where he shines the most. Now, out of the two, he has the worst drone. But even then, he makes up for it just with his base character. The barrel, especially with incoming keg, is incredibly strong. About 150 damage, can kill the Acorns on top of an Oak, and is just a very good move for dealing with big groups. The anchor is a very good grappling hook. It can get you to some very good high ground, and, if the anchor hits someone, it can actually kill them, as you've probably seen that one clip I uploaded on my channel a couple days ago. So as a whole, Deadbeard is a very, very solid B tier character. AllStar is a character that used to be incredibly strong, and he still is very strong, just not as strong as he used to be. The dummy shield, with 200 health, is very good for blocking attacks for you and your team. Imp Hunt, dealing about 100 damage, 150 with huge fuse, is a very strong weapon, and just as a whole, AllStar is an incredibly powerful character, especially in this final patch, with the ability to bunny hop like a pea shooter, but with the health and damage of an AllStar. Sprint Tackle is also very good. And just as a general, I'd say he's probably one of the best defense zombies out of the 3. I'd even say I was honestly tempted to put him in A tier, but thinking about it, I decided he was definitely a high B tier. So, that's where AllStar stands on this tier list. In many ways, Shogun Guard is a direct upgrade from regular Corn, while some people consider it a downgrade. You lose half your ammo, but you do get extra damage per shot. You have a similar firing output, similar to Commando Corn, the way it's like a kind of 1-2-1-2 rather than a constant stream. Similar to Foot Soldier, it's more akin to Commando Corn. In fact, when he was first released, people were saying it was Commando Corn's return. But with decent damage output and, a good ammo pool, you also get a small shield. Now, this shield isn't very strong, and it is only designed to cover your head, so your feet are still exposed. It does just that. It's good at tanking hits that would hit your headshot, like shots from a Deadbeard. Although it is very weak, it doesn't take long to regenerate back to full, and it starts regenerating in only a second. So I would say it's definitely the strongest, like probably like the second, third strongest of the legendary upgrades, and it's a definite B tier. You might argue that the Zmek would be A, but I've decided to leave it as a very, very high B tier character. So obviously you have Bionic Bash, which is 75 damage, good at taking out Acorns and Nightcaps around you, and weakening anyone around you. And obviously you do have the armor as well. So you've got like 15% armor, which you never used to have on the Zmek. And the Missile Madness is also an incredibly strong ability as the final update. It's a lot stronger than what it used to be, by far. And in Ops, in BFN, it shreds. It's by far the strongest character in Ops. Just by far. So for that reason, I'm going to have to rank it as a very high B character. Acorn is a very weird character. He's impossible to land headshots on unless you are an engineer or someone who can critically hit him. Acorn Dash is very good. It's a very good mobility option. Gets pretty far. But then the Sap Trap is a thing, allowing you to pretty much get on any high ground and cover any amount of distance, just because of the versatility of sap jumping, at least in, the last update. And in all honesty, is definitely by far probably the, one of the strongest defense characters just on his own. He's very hard to hit, he's very mobile, and he can get just about anywhere. He's kind of like sand, just annoying and gets everywhere, really. For that reason, that's why he is probably, in my opinion, one of the strongest B tier characters. Now, I've already talked about why TV Head is, in my opinion, the best of the two, between him and Wildfire. But the main thing we'll talk about is his Grenade, Yeti Imp, and him as a whole. So his weapon does have less ammo, and by that, it has less damage, but he makes up for it with his Grenade, which can be slid across the ground, unlike Wildfire's. He can throw 2 at a time, being able to uproot pea shooters in Gatling and sunbeams in Gatling immediately, and can hit Oaks for half their HP in just one ability, the Overheated Dinner with Dinner for 2 equipped. And the Yeti Imp is able to slow people down, as well as being pretty much one of the fastest things in the game, so for that reason I'd say he's definitely an A tier character. Hades is a very strong character, as if basically, if Deadbeard was an attack class. He's got a lot of health to work with, good range, good damage output, and very strong abilities. Dynamite Dodge gives him very, very good mobility, especially when upgraded with Leg Day. Rocket Ride is very strong, and Can't Missile is also quite a strong ability, especially on Oaks that have maximum Acorn passengers. Just as a general, he's a very good attack class, and especially for more accurate and skilled players, he is definitely very good. And then there's the Flying 80s glitch, which I'm gonna make another video about, but more so when it is and isn't acceptable to use it. But other than that, definitely a good A tier character. Having basically the best sprint in the game, having full 360 sprinting, the ability to stun enemies, cancel swoop slam and unburrow chompers, able to speed himself up along with his team, and a turret that is very strong against other people and buffs him and his allies' fire rate and reload. Engineer is a very strong character. Bouncing projectiles means he can cover a very small corridor, making it almost impassable, especially with the help of the heavy helper. There's one point in a turf map, I believe it's Turning Point, in the first point with the boat, where that is very, very apparent. One of the most popular places to use Engineer from what I've seen. Good damage output, about 38, and I think it can even go into the 40s if you're using Combat Aura. But just as a general, Engineer is a very strong character, and I feel like he deserves to be an A tier. I was even tempted to put him in S. Almost the more acceptable version of Chomper, and a direct upgrade from Fire Chomper, Snapdragon has some of the most damaging abilities in the game. Swoop Slam is able to do 150 damage on impact and is incredibly strong with 100 splash. Blue Blazers is basically a homing ZPG with 5 damage. Blazing Trail is good at cutting off areas and doing a lot of damage to slow, still moving targets like bosses or Zmeks on space stations. And his long-range weapon, the flare ball, is also very good as well. It's quite strong, especially if you give it the upgrade, it makes it do more damage and splash. And the flame blower is also good for dealing with big groups of enemies. So for that reason, Snapdragon is a definite A-tier character. Considering he's the starting character you normally start playing, he's incredibly strong. P-Shooter is, by far, a very, very strong character. You don't really need to aim with him at all, and Last Ditch means you can do basically 90 damage in a single hit. Gatling, especially with Reload Gatling, is very good at preserve pastures against Gargs and just against high health targets in general for dealing with massive groups. Beam Bomb is very good for things like ops and small spaces with lots of zombies. And with the Hyper, I forgot what it's called, P-Suit, that's what it is. With P-Suit, you're able to pretty much fly and go wherever you want. So for that reason, I think P-Shooter is quite possibly one of the stronger ends of the attack plants. Oh, I remember when Steam Blast was completely busted. But anyway, enough about that. Steam Blaster as a whole is basically Scientist if he was full combat. And this is probably the best example of a glass cannon I can give you. High damage output and not a lot of health to work with. You do a lot of damage with Steam Blaster. You can do a lot. The only difference is that you don't really have any combat abilities. So your only real source of damage dealing is the steam. So in some cases, you will need the help of a teammate occasionally to help back you up a little bit, just in case things go a little pear-shaped. But apart from that, I'd say Steam Blaster is one of the strongest things in the game. You might be wondering why I didn't put Brainium Basher in S tier. I'd have good reason to as well. Arguably one of the strongest things in this game. Some of the highest damage output in the game, and with the moveset of Super Brains, you'd think I would put him in S tier. The only reason I haven't is because, in a way, he is very overrated. There are a lot of counters to Brainium Basher, and for that reason I have only put him in A tier, but if there was very little ways to counter him, he would definitely be S tier. The only issue is, obviously, that there are ways to counter him, such as Citron, and you got Acorn as well, who's also quite good, and Shogun Guard, whose shield is even able to block them, block the dash. And Potato Mines can all be very good counters. But as a whole, Brainium Basher is still incredibly strong. I've just decided to put him as the highest point of A tier, just because of how strong he is. Now to S tier. And here we have Foot Soldier at the first bit, who I'd say is probably one of the best characters in this game. He's an incredibly versatile character. You can get on virtually any piece of high ground. ZPG is able to kill most plants in the game, as well as doing high splash. The Stink Cloud is a very good damage option, blinds your enemies, and with Sticky, is pretty much able to kill most 100 health or 125 health characters, like pea shooters and cacti. Just in general, Foot Soldier is such a good character, just all round, and as a skilled player, pretty much anyone could do well with Foot Soldier. You just can't go wrong, and for that reason, he's just S tier. Just one of the best characters in the game, really. I could make an entire video on why Citron is completely broken. 600 health peel shield, full 360 degree sprinting, EM Peach spin dash, and a weapon that has way too much ammo along with way too much damage. Citron is an incredibly broken character, and arguably one of the strongest plants in the game, as well as the most annoying to face. And you know what, I am actually going to make a video at some point, not necessarily today, but at some point down the line, I am going to make a video about why Citron is fundamentally broken. But just know that Citron is an easy S tier character. And now, the best character, in my opinion, in BFN, Super Brains. In all honesty, I love this character so much. When with Ultra Combo, almost over 150 damage, roughly, with his punches. Hyper Jump Thump is incredibly powerful, sets up perfectly for the punches of Turbo Twister. Turbo Twister on its own, incredibly strong. And Ultra Ball is like a kind of weaker version of the ZPG, but in my opinion, a little bit better. I honestly love Super Brains so much. I've pretty much mained him religiously since Founders. And even in Garden Warfare 2, he's one of my favourite classes. Just as a whole, he's such a good character. And I just think I don't even know what else to say about him. Even his shield, which not many people use, is incredibly good. Just as a whole, Super Brains is an incredibly good character. And many people do acknowledge this, but many people would say that Brainium Basher is the stronger version of Super Brains, and probably the best Super Brains experience you get. But I'd say probably the best experience is just regular BFN Super Brains. So, there we go. Didn't expect this video to be so long, but hey. So, thank you for watching today. Like and subscribe, and thank you for the 100 subscribers as well, by the way, guys. Next big milestone is 150. So, be sure to like and subscribe if you'd like to help us hit that milestone. Thank you, and have a good day.